I don't think most of you will ever understand how much money you can easily make with Airbnb arbitrage in 2025 by literally just renting houses and then renting them out to other people and collecting that difference. You might think that that's an oversimplification, but it's really not. And most of you have heard people talk about Airbnb arbitrage or this rental arbitrage thing, but nobody realizes you can do this without even risking $1 of your own money. And if you don't believe me, I'm a 24-year-old kid who started doing this 5 years ago, and I came from nothing. I was flat broke, getting out of the military, and you can see, I'll log into my dashboard right here. I'll refresh it a couple times for you. And you could see that just in the last 19 days, just from May 1st to May 19th, I'm recording this on the 19th, we did over $100,000, $105,000 in revenue. And I'll go more into the numbers later on what it looks like and stuff like that. But $105,000 in just the last 19 days. Now, I want to show you what we did in April as well. So I'll go over to April 1st to April 30th. As you see right here, hit apply. And you can see we did $168,706 just last month in April in 30 days. Now, again, this is revenue. We stick around 60% profit margins. So last month we did, around $100,000 in profit in our pocket. You can see gross, and then you see our average daily rate or nightly rate in this case. Now, I want to go ahead and show you what we did for last year as well in 2024. So I'll go January 1st, 2024, and then December 31st of 2024 as well. As you can see right here at the top, hit apply, and you can see we did $1,877,000. And I'll go ahead and do that again just so you can, this isn't like made up or anything like that. You can see January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024, $1,877,000 and $806 with the average nightly rate of $348. Now, I showed you the whole year so you can know I actually do this, and I showed you the last 19 days and even the last month, so you know that this wasn't just a fluke. So in today's video, I'm going to give you a super raw rundown of how you can do this exact same thing from never having touched a property to building an actual Airbnb empire in just 3 months that could legitimately make you millions of dollars per year without even spending $1 of your own cash. So let's jump right into it. Now, I'll typically refer to this as rental arbitrage because you'll hear the term Airbnb arbitrage, which kind of lets you think or leads you to think that it only has to do with Airbnb. Now, rental arbitrage, not only can you rent on platforms like Airbnb, VRBO, Bookings.com, on other short-term rental platforms, you can also rent out to insurance companies, business professionals, et cetera, through contracts and stuff like that. So I'm going to break down the basics of rental arbitrage, and then I'm going to show you exactly how you can do it yourself so that you can get this business started and, have it cash flowing in just a few months. Now, when it comes to rental arbitrage, the basics of it, the first thing that you would do is rent a property. Yes, not buy, not get a loan, not get a mortgage, anything like that. You would rent a property from a landlord, and then typically when you're renting it, you would have the landlord sign what's called a sublease addendum. Now, that is essentially an agreement that allows you to sublease someone else's home and profit off their home and, list it on platforms like Airbnb and make 4 times what you're paying in rent. So a property that you pay $2,000 a month in rent, you'll probably make about $8,000 a month in revenue. That's before expenses. Now, once we rent a property, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set that property up. Now, typically I would do this with interior designers, or not even typically, I would always do this with an interior designer. Not any interior designer that specializes in Airbnbs and short-term rentals. I happen to have my own interior design company. I have 9 interior designers, and they all specialize in Airbnbs. So much so that they've done every major Airbnb company that claims to do interior design. Typically, we're the ones that do it for them. Any of your favorite gurus or anything in Airbnb space, a lot of the times we've done interior design for them. But once we rent the property, we would set the property up, typically using interior designers to furnish, do the decor, the amenities, and then take photos of the property as well. And then from there, we would list the property on platforms like Airbnb, VRBO, Bookings.com, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where we would make our money, because we would charge a nightly rate on these properties. If the property is $2,000 a month in rent, then we'll probably charge anywhere from $200 to $400 a night in rent, depending on what the property offers and what the property has, right? And then from there, we set up automations, AI, and systems. So the property itself, but the business most of all, is self-sufficient and runs itself. And then on top of this, I do this all and I fund it all using 0% interest business credit cards. So that not only does the business fund itself, but it also pays itself off and it profits at the same time. So it ends up in a cycle where the business ends up completely self-sufficient, and you can scale as fast as you want because you're not relying on having capital to put a down payment on a property or having capital to get approved for a mortgage or a loan on any properties. You're just renting the properties. So, and you can always get more and more 0% interest business credit cards, like the longer that your business goes. And the cool part about that is, like I said, there's 0% interest depending on the card, 12 to 24 months at a time. So you're not having to use any of your own cash or any of your own funds to do it if you don't want to. So let's get into it. So the first thing you would want to do is obviously rent a property. So how do you know where you want to rent, what you want to rent, what to look for, all of that? So the first place I would go is to Airbnb. Now, Airbnb is a place that can track all data points when it comes to short-term rentals, particularly tracking two platforms, Airbnb and VRBO, which are the two biggest short-term rental platforms. And when I say short-term rentals, that's any properties that you rent on a short-term basis, like a nightly basis, just like Airbnbs and VRBOs. Now, it has all these data points and stuff that you could look into, which none of this, I mean, it's cool data to have, but none of this is really particularly important when it comes to finding a property. Now, what I like to do is I like mid-sized cities. So you can see that Tampa is up here. Tampa is a large city, St. Petersburg, large city. And I found a similar city to those cities, but it's on the coast. It's a mid-sized city. So that means it's going to be very easy for me to break into that market and be very competitive, versus being in a large market where there's, thousands of properties that are crushing it and doing really well. In this case, there's only going to be a few properties that are crushing it. And so all that I need to do is go over here where it says short-term rental listings. And I typically like to filter for smaller properties. And when I say smaller, I mean 3-bedroom, 2-bath, nothing smaller than that. Typically the larger property, the more money that you'll make. If you're just starting, I would suggest a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. In this case, I filtered for 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I put entire place, and then I put house, and I hit apply. Now, the reason I do that is because I like to stay away from apartments because they're just more work, more effort. They can't offer what a house has. They don't have a backyard. They don't have a private pool. They don't have a garage. They don't have a driveway. You can't add custom amenities because you have just such a finite amount of space. And when it comes to having apartments as Airbnbs, you're really just competing with hotels. And in that case, if someone's looking for a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom place, they're probably just looking for the cheapest option that looks the best. And that's really just a race to the bottom. So you're competing against everyone else for the cheapest price versus having a home. You can add things and you can have amenities to the point where you're not competing for others for price. You're competing for others based off what it offers and what it looks like. And that means more money and charging a higher rate. Just like these properties that are, making $145,000, $140,000, $140,000 a year in revenue. And they're probably profiting around $80,000 a year off each one of these properties. So that is freaking awesome. Apologies. My neck was bothering me. You can see that none of these properties are available for 365 days, meaning they would make more money if they were available all year. Now, the reason being is, I know maybe the people have family that they have come visit, once a year, whatever it is, but it would obviously be very beneficial to them if they were to rent out on a yearly basis. Now, what I can see from here is that these are all single-story houses, right? Nothing crazy about them. They have a pool, they have nice decor, they have nice furniture, they have good landscaping, and that's pretty much the same thing for all of these. But they're nothing insane, nothing that you couldn't replicate, and nothing that would be hard to do yourself. So now I know that I'm looking for single-story houses in Sarasota, Florida, because that's where we're at, with a pool. And now that I can see, each one of these properties are about $500 a night. Now I have what's called a 10-day rule. Now with that 10-day rule, you would want to make your rent back in 10 days or less. So in that case, I would need a property that's less than $5,000 a month in rent. Because if we're charging $500 a day, in 10 days, you would make $5,000. So we would make our rent back in 10 days. So I would go over to Zillow. And since these are 3-bedroom, 2-bath properties with a pool, that I need to be less than $5,000 a month, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select properties for rent, hit apply. I'm going to hit maximum of $5,000. I'm going to select 3-bedroom, 2-bath, hit apply. Home type is going to be house and entire place. And then next, I'm going to must have a pool. Then I'm going to hit apply. Now, I see this property right here. This is the same thing, single story house, same area as those properties. It has a nice backyard with good landscaping. It's updated on the interior, so it's very similar to the other properties, and it checks all the boxes. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, which is larger, so it means it would probably make more than what these properties make. But for now, we'll just run it conservatively and we'll run the numbers off these properties. But just keep in mind when I'm doing this, and I'm gonna show you what the numbers look like, that this property will be more profitable than these properties simply for the fact that it can hold more people. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this rent right here. I'm gonna go over to my arbitrage calculator. Now, all the stuff that I'm showing y'all can get access to in the link down in the description. I'll give you, I have a free course that you can get access to. And if you're wanting to, work one-on-one with someone, have someone hold your hand and work in your business with you. If you potentially want something like that, you could book a call down below in the link in the description. I don't work with everyone and I don't work with a lot of people. I typically only accept a couple people per month. I'm not one of these people online that has thousands of clients or thousands of students. And I work with a very select few amount of people. And that's the reason why the people that I work with have such good results, because I make sure I work with people that are very driven, have high ambition, and know exactly what they want, so that when I give them the play and I work with them and show them exactly how to do everything, they execute on everything and they execute very quickly. Now what I'm going to do is go over here and I'll put 3775, which is what the rent is on this property. And I would predict, you can use this as well, the furnishing rules, but I would predict I'd probably do about $15,000 in furnishing on a property like this. Now keep in mind, I'm doing this all with 0% interest business credit cards, so I'm not using any of my own cash to do this either. And then I'm going to take the average of these properties, because these are the 3 best properties that I'm seeing in the area, and I want to replicate what they're doing. So it would only make sense for me to base my numbers off their numbers, because I intend to set up everything in my property to be just like their properties or better than their properties. Now, I'm going to go over here and I can see that this one's 513, 520, 497. So I could say the average daily rate on these properties is about 510. So I'm going to put 510 right here. And then I can see this one's 88%, 84%, and 87% occupancy. So the average of those is probably about 86% occupancy. So in that case, this property would make about $13,000 a month in revenue. That's before expenses, and $157,896 a year in revenue, again, before expenses. And then $8,500 a month in cash flow, which is your profit. That's what you would put in your pocket, or you would put towards paying off your business credit cards. Keep in mind, there's 0% interest, depending on the card, 12 to 24 months of 0% interest. And this property would make $102,000 a year in profit. And then insane ROI on this, you get almost a 38% ROI. That's monthly ROI, which would put you at like a 400% ROI on the year, or more than that actually. And you would make your money back in just over 2 months, which is totally insane considering just business in general. Very profitable from day one, and making money, from the first day that you start it. And then on top of that, you're not using any of your own money or any of your own funds to, pay for the business either. So the business ends up being very, very self-sufficient, to the point where you're using the business to acquire 0% interest funds. So the business is funding itself, it's paying itself off, and it's profiting, so that you end up in this, cycle to where you can do it over and over. And the cool part about that is because you're doing it like this, where you're renting the properties and you're not buying them. You can scale as fast as possible because you're not relying on having any funds for a down payment or getting approved for a loan or anything like that. You just have to have business funds, business credit cards, so that you can, pay for the rent and pay for the furniture to set up the property. You can do that, rinse and repeat. And the properties can pay off the cards. You can use the cards again. You can even acquire more cards if you want to have more capital. Typically, when someone's working with me, they usually get in between 100 to 200,000 and 0% interest business credit cards. Yep, multiple six figures. And typically, if someone was to set up an LLC and go to the bank and do it themselves, they wouldn't get very much funds. Now, from here, now that we understand, how to rent the property, how to run the numbers, how to do the analysis. Now we need to understand how to set up a property. Now, the best way to do that is to use interior designers. Now, I have my own interior design company. We have 9 interior designers that specialize in Airbnbs and short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are just properties that you rent on a daily basis, like Airbnbs. And they are very, very, very good at what they do, to the point that we can list properties in almost any city, say Scottsdale, for example, which is a very, very, thick market, very, very competitive market. There's a lot of properties doing really, really well. So you really have to be on top of everything and be on your P's and Q's when it comes to having a property in that market. And even if I go over here and show you, if I go just to Scottsdale, typically, yep, our property is number 1. This is property that we set up. In the first month, it got to top 5% of properties. And you can see it's a rare find, usually booked. We're charging more than anyone else is. And right now it's slow season. So it's not like spring where you can charge the most and people are traveling a lot. And now, obviously, as you can see, when you look up Scottsdale, it's number 1 in all of Scottsdale, which is really, really hard to do. So that just goes to show you how good our team is at what they do. And we've done interior design for almost every major Airbnb company that, does interior design. Typically, we do it for them a lot of the times. We've done interior design for, a lot of major, gurus on Instagram that, do Airbnb. We typically do the interior design for them. So yeah, that's how we go about setup, either using my team or finding an interior designer on Thumbtack. And when you click on these people, you can see like the work that they've done. You can see all their photos. You can also text them and ask them. You can message them on here and ask them what their experience is with Airbnbs and if they can send you any Airbnbs that they've done. And obviously, you want to make sure that those Airbnbs are very profitable. Now, the next thing we want to do is list the actual property itself on Airbnb. So when you're doing this, I'm just going to click on a random property just so I can, explain it to you. I don't know why it's showing me all these random places. Maybe I could spell this right. I don't know why I was typing in Sorrento, but Sarasota, anytime. Then I'm just going to click on a random property. Let's look at this one. So the things you want to pay attention to when you're setting up your property. Now, when you get onto Airbnb and you would log into your host account, where you can see where I can hit switch to host, it would prompt you to set up your listing. You would want to make sure to have a great title. I would look at other similar Airbnbs, see how their titles look, all the ones that are best performing, and see how they look. The title is this right here, the gray, not the bold. And you can see exactly what they have in there. Typically, they have something about the property, like as far as something nice about it, how it sounds. And then as far as what it has, if it's close to the beach, if it's downtown, if it has a hot tub and a king size bed, amenities or stuff that the property itself offers. Now, of course, the next thing you want to pay attention to is having very, very high quality photos, which you can find photographers on Thumbtack as well. You would just look up photographer, and you would want to particularly find a photographer that specializes in real estate, and if you can, Airbnbs. Now, the next important thing is going to be your description. Now, what I like to do is if I'm in an area, I would just find, the top best performing, and you can even use Airbnb, top best performing properties in that area. And you would want to just copy and actually I can just pull it from one of these properties. You would want to, this is the best property in the area. And what I would do is I would take this description, I would copy it, and then I would go over to ChatGPT and I would drop it in ChatGPT and tell it to create me a listing based off my property's details. And then you would give it everything about your property, because obviously it's not going to be identical to this property, or maybe even it is. And you can ask it to change it up and make sure it doesn't sound the same as that one. Now, the next thing we want to do is automate this business. So the first few important things, the number one most important one is going to be price labs. Now, I don't want to pull up my account. So Price Labs is a dynamic pricing software and uses AI and algorithms to make sure that it analyzes the market at all times of the day, every week, month, day, to make sure that your property pricing is constantly changing so that you're making as much money as possible while staying as occupied as possible. I would not, run this business at all without this. This is like the number one thing that you need. Now, the second best thing that you need, and this is like crucial to this whole business, this is like the spine, the backbone of your whole business, is going to be your cleaners. Now, Turno is where you can hire cleaners and you can see reviews from previous hosts that have used those cleaners, and you can see reviews from guests from Airbnbs that they have cleaned. You can automate pricing and you can automate cleaning so that they know when to come and when to clean the properties when guests aren't there. Now, the next important thing, and this is the brain of your operation, is going to be Guesty. This is where you saw at the beginning of this video where I'm showing like my numbers, where I did the last 19 days, what I did the last month, what I did in last year. That's Guesty. Guesty tracks all of your revenue, connects all your calendars from all your different platforms so you don't get bookings on the same day for the same property from different guests. You can automate messaging with your guests. You can automate check-in and check-out, so you don't have to do any of that work yourself. This is, super, super crucial. So that's pretty much the basics of everything. Now, as far as getting access to funds, the first thing you need to do is obviously set up your LLC. Now, the easiest place, in my opinion, is going to be Busy, which is previously known as Inkfile. You want to select an LLC, and then best places to set up an LLC is going to be Wyoming, Delaware, or Nevada, simply for, tax reasons, and it's pretty cheap to file in these states as well. And you would just hit start my business. I like the free option or the cheapest option where you just pay the state fee. And then you would hit get started, and then you would put your LLC name. Typically, I like to put like somebody's initials and then put logistics. It doesn't need to sound cool. If it sounds cool, it's usually worse as far as getting access to business funds. Now, once you go through this and you set up your LLC, you're going to want to set up business checking accounts at Chase and and then you want to apply for business credit cards at Amex as well. And once you set up an account at Chase, you're going to have to go in person and set up an account there. Then if your personal credit is good, you have a 680 to 700 credit score or above, you can apply for 0% interest business credit cards with Chase, Wells Fargo, US Bank, Amex, all the major banks. And you can get access to 0% interest funds. Now, the only downside to that is that it's probably going to be a new LLC. And even if it's not, it's going to be a new business relationship with that bank. And you're probably not going to get very much funds, especially when it comes to, starting a multi-six-figure and even seven-figure business. You're going to want access to a lot of funds. And the more you have, especially when it's at 0% interest, the better. Now, that's why when people that work with me, I acquire 0% interest business funds for people, because I leverage my relationships, my reputation, and my connections with banks. And I have, bank reps that, I can literally text and call to make sure the people that I'm working with get approved for higher amounts, because it's all about having relationships with those banks. So someone would only get, 10 to 20,000 in 0% interest funds. I can get them $100,000 to $200,000 in 0% interest funds. Now, I hope everything made sense for you. If you want to see a more in-depth, longer video where I go through each one of these steps and, go in depth on each one of these steps and fill them out and go step by step on how to do each and everything. Then I'll put that video at the end of this video as well, in that little section, whatever you call it. But if you're someone that wants to work with someone one-on-one, have your hand held throughout the whole business, have my phone number, have me work inside the business with you, almost functioning like a partner, then you can click the link down below and book a call. On that call, we're going to go over and figure out if you're someone that we would even work with in the first place. Like I said, I work with a very finite, very few amount of people, because I only work with people that are very ambitious, very driven, and I know are going to succeed, because I don't want to work with people that aren't driven, aren't ambitious. Like, I don't need to mentor people at all. The money that I make from working with people one-on-one, setting their business up for them, but something that I don't necessarily need. But when it comes to working with me and hopping on that call, we're going to make sure that you're someone that we want to work with. And of course, make sure that you want to work with us. It has to be a mutual decision. Now, when it comes to working with me one-on-one, we will acquire the 0% interest funds for you. My team will negotiate properties for you, so you're not having to call landlords and convince them on this business. My whole team will do that for you. And we'll also, do the interior design, furnish, and set up the property 100% for you, hands off, completely remotely, no matter where you live. So really 90 to 95% of it is going to be done for you. All the hard stuff is going to be done for you. All you really need to do is the small stuff when it comes to, setting up the LLC and stuff like that. And even if you want us to manage the business for you, we can manage it for you as well. But I typically don't recommend that for your first couple properties, because it's very, very easy to manage less than 5 properties, as long as you have your automations and stuff in place. And if you're working with me, then I'll make sure all of that is dialed in, so that you're making as much as possible with working as little as possible. When I say as little as possible, I mean a couple hours a week. So if that's something that you might be interested in, you can click the link down below to book a call. There's another link down there where you can join my free course, which gives you all the basics of this as well. You can get, the calculator and stuff that I use in this video. And if you want a more in-depth video breaking everything down, I'll put that at the end of this video, and you can watch through that as well. Peace, guys.